Good morning to you, sophomores. I'm out here on the sunroom porch. I've got my hammock chair going. It's going to be 83 degrees today. I'm in my bare feet. I haven't been able to use this room. It's kind of like what we call a 2.5 season room. It's not all that comfortable when it gets super hot or super cold. I've got my RK Rosati Cane coffee mug, my copy of Kite Runner. I'm ready for the day. Hey, thank you very much for your time yesterday pitching some of your ideas. You've got some good ones in there. And we're going to keep working on that theme today of developing a topic. I've got a few different tasks for you today. The first task is unusual, but I'm going to ask you to do it as prescribed. So follow the doctor's orders. So I had some fun telling a story, not so different from the kind of story that you will be telling for this assignment. So I told you a story about, well, it's called the Gold Star, or the Gold Stars, and it's from maybe age 6. And I gotta admit, my sense of the details, especially details like street names, what people looked like, what they said, is pretty fuzzy because I was only 6 when this story took place. But I did my very best to bring that story to life with some level of detail. Now I'm telling the story orally, and I'm using kind of the medium of radio, so it'll be a little different than if you were to write it out. But I wrote a story, and it's about 15, 16 plus minutes long, and I've added some little NPR-inspired bells and whistles to the story. So what I want you to do for this part of the class today is I want you to download that story onto some kind of device. It could even be your iPad, but you have to go away from your room, you have to go outside, and you have to do something else that's not reading, that's not homework, while you listen to the story. So you can walk the dog around the block, you could just walk around the block yourself, you can put on some AirPods if you got them, shoot some baskets in the yard, take the old lacrosse stick behind the garage, go sit on the old swing set that's sitting in the back of your yard that you haven't used in a while. But whatever you do, you should go outside and listen to the story while you're doing something else that's not school related. So half of your daily deliverable to me is listening to that story. All right, you got that? That's task number 1. Now task number 2 is related, and I want you to listen carefully to this part because there are 2 really important concepts we're going to work on tonight and tomorrow. And they're very familiar to anyone who's read stories or novels before, but we don't maybe know the terminology. But it's the distinction when you're telling a story between when to slow down and craft a scene and when to speed up and do what's called summary. A great example of this would be in Kite Runner in the first encounter with Asef. And if you got your Kite Runner handy, and I'll pause for just a minute while you go find it, why don't you go to page 43 in your Kite Runner? Mine's probably backwards because my film is flipped, but page 43. And you'll notice at the bottom of 42, the very last line, that we're right in the middle of a scene. Because we have dialogue, that's usually a sign that we're in the middle of a scene, because if people are talking and people are responding to what people are saying, it's kind of happening in real time. So think of a scene as something where time has slowed down to almost the level of now. And Asef says, "You should know something about me, Hazara." Asef said gravely, "I'm a very patient person. This doesn't end today. Believe me," he turned to me. "This isn't the end for you either, Amir. Someday I'll make you face me one-on-one." Asef retreated a step. His disciples followed. Right? So we're getting literally like footsteps, details that bring us right into the reality of this moment. And then he continues. And then we have the slingshot. And we have Hassan trying to tuck it back into his waist with a pair of trembling hands, right? It brings us close to what the people are experiencing in that moment. It took him 5 tries, it says, to tie the string of his trousers, right? Little details. They didn't, and that shouldn't have comforted us a little, but it didn't, not at all. And the scene ends. And if you notice, there's a little bit of a page break here, a line break. And then suddenly, for the next couple of years, the words, you see how we've now gone up in the helicopter and we've left the ground level reality, and now we're going to move over several years. For your story, it might be several days between trips to a hospital room. between the time you did something and you got caught, right? But it might be a couple of months. But we don't want to write a story for this assignment that takes place over years. We want to find something that, while there might be a couple of scenes that take place over a few days or even months, the story is driven by a set of scenes. And I think a good rule of thumb would be somewhere between 3 and 5 very concrete scenes where you can flesh out the story in real time. And then those scenes would be stitched together by a narrator who's doing a little bit of a summary that moves us from one scene to the next. So that's a little brief introduction to scene and summary. So you today will be listening to my podcast, which is a story that'll be kind of a model for the story that you're going to tell. I'm going to have you read another model tomorrow. You're going to, in your own version of Kite Runner, find another example outside of page 43, maybe something closer to where we've ended, where the story moves from real-time scene, look for dialogue, look for lots of like concrete detail, gestures, people taking their eyeglasses off, people rubbing their head, things that really bring you close to a moment, and look for a moment in the book on your own where Husseini moves from scene to summary. And maybe a great place to look would just be in the journey away, the last chapter we read, the journey away from Kabul into Jalalabad or Peshawar. I'm not sure where they're going. I think it's Peshawar in Pakistan. Okay, so you got that. So that's your second task, is go find a place on your own where you can see the writer doing that. And then your third task is to take one of the topics that you wrote for today, and you don't have to pick it yet, but say it's the most likely one that you'd want to write about. Something that's meaningful to you. This is key. Something that you care about. I don't want you to hide and automatically avoid topics that reveal things about you that you would not want me to know, because they may be the ones you most need to write about, right? These will be confidential for the most part. I'd like to peer review them, but if you just don't want anybody to see yours for whatever reason, we can do that. But I want you to take one of the topics for today, and this is a very small task, but I want you to think about what would the scenes look like in that story. So let's say I did my little version of the Gold Star story, and I go back to the little scene. Maybe there's a scene of me in my classroom noticing other kids in first grade getting gold stars, and I wasn't. And then maybe there's another scene of me at this bookstore where I first see these gold stars, where I can just buy them myself. And then you'll know what the other scenes are. But I think in that story there's maybe 5 scenes, and I actually cut a scene in a car at the end just for time. So try to think of 5 scenes that would go in your story, and you'll submit those as your daily deliverable, right? So this was a longer video. I'm sorry about that. So all you need to do today, you need to listen to the 16-minute podcast. You need to find an example of where this story moves from scene to summary on your own beyond page 43. And then you need to write down 5 possible scenes in a topic that you would be most likely to choose. And if you're having a hard time thinking of any scenes, that's probably a sign that that's not a good topic, that you've not got the detail in your mind to do that. Hey, feel free to call and ask friends or people who were there, and parents and anyone you can, to do some research on your scene. Feel free to go to Google Maps if it happened in an old neighborhood, and just see what's out there and do your homework to see if you can find the detail that you can't remember. All right, so longer video than I wanted. Thank you very much for hanging out with me on the sun porch. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll keep this video way shorter next time. Thank you.